Marriage teaches you to recognize footsteps. I knew my husband's walk, the confident rhythm, the slight drag of his right shoe when he was tired. For 8 years, that sound had meant safety, home, certainty. Even lately, when the warmth between us thinned and conversations became shorter, I still believed in us. I believed distance was temporary. Love, I thought, was stronger. That belief shattered on a quiet Wednesday afternoon. I hadn't planned to be there. The cafe near the river was just a place I stopped by to clear my head, to sip coffee and pretend my life wasn't slowly slipping into something unfamiliar. The glass windows reflected sunlight, couples laughing, life happening, and then I saw him, my husband. Not alone, he sat at a corner table, leaning forward in a way he hadn't leaned toward me in months. His hand rested casually on the table, too close to hers. The woman across from him was poised, graceful, silver threaded delicately through her styled hair. She wore confidence like perfume, an older woman, elegant, comfortable, familiar. They laughed. The sound punched the air from my lungs. For a brief, cruel second, my body forgot how to breathe. My fingers trembled around my cup, coffee cooling unnoticed. I waited for him to pull away, to glance around nervously, to look like a guilty man. He didn't. That hurt more than the sight itself. Something strange happened then. The tears I expected never came. Instead, a calm spread through me. Cold, clear, unsettling. My heart didn't race. My hands steadied, and I stood up. Each step toward them felt unreal, like walking through water. He noticed me when I was only a few feet away. I saw the exact moment recognition struck. His smile froze, eyes widening just enough to betray him. "Hey," I said softly, my voice shockingly steady. He stammered my name. The older woman turned to me, curiosity flickering across her composed face. She looked me up and down, not unkindly, not apologetically either. Assessing, I smiled, not a polite smile. Not a nervous one, a slow, deliberate smile that surprised even me. "Your friend is lovely," I said, tilting my head slightly, eyes never leaving hers. 18 years your senior, maybe. Silence crashed over the table. My husband's face drained of color. His mouth opened, then closed, words abandoning him. The woman raised an eyebrow, amusement dancing briefly in her eyes before she looked at him, really looked at him. "I didn't realize you were married," she said calmly. He reached for my arm, panic tightening his grip. "This isn't what it looks like. Isn't it always?" I gently removed his hand. "No," I replied, still smiling. "It's exactly what it looks like." I didn't wait for explanations. I didn't ask questions. I didn't beg. I turned and walked away, my back straight, my steps unhurried. The door closed behind me with a soft chime that felt final. Only when I reached my car did my chest tighten. Only then did the weight of it press down on me. The betrayal, the humiliation, the quiet months of emotional absence suddenly explained. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, staring ahead as the world blurred. But even then, I didn't cry. Because somewhere between that cafe table and my car, something inside me had changed. Love hadn't died. It had withdrawn. And in its place grew something sharper, stronger. I whispered to my reflection in the rearview mirror, my smile returning, different now. "Knowing this is not the end," I said softly, "it was the beginning." The house felt different after that day, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. My husband came home late, he always did now. When he walked through the door, he tried to act normal, as if I hadn't seen the truth reflected in a cafe window. He kissed my cheek, asked about my day, avoided my eyes. I watched him the way you watch a stranger wearing someone else's face. I didn't confront him, not yet. That night, lying beside him, I realized how long betrayal had been growing between us. It hadn't begun at the cafe. It had started months ago, in missed dinners, unanswered texts, the way his phone never left his side. I had mistaken neglect for stress, silence for exhaustion. Love makes excuses for the people it wants to trust. Sleep didn't come, memories did. I remembered the early years when we were nothing but hope and ambition. I stood beside him when his career stalled, when rejection letters piled up, when doubt hollowed him out. I encouraged him, celebrated every small victory. I believed in him fiercely, sometimes more than he believed in himself. Now I wondered who else had been standing beside him while I wasn't looking. The truth revealed itself slowly, like a wound reopening each day. She wasn't just an affair. The older woman, her name slipped out during a careless phone call he didn't realize I overheard, had been part of his professional world for years. A mentor, a benefactor, someone with influence, connections, power, someone who helped him climb while I waited at home, proud and patient. When I finally asked him, he laughed, a soft, dismissive sound. You're imagining things. Gaslighting is subtle. It arrives wrapped in concern, in tired smiles and patronizing reassurances. He told me I was overthinking, that I was insecure, that nothing inappropriate was happening. Yet he couldn't explain the messages I found, the late meetings, the familiarity. Don't be dramatic, he said once, irritation creeping into his voice. She's just a friend who touched his arm. Just a friend who knew his schedule better than I did. Just a friend who looked at me like I was temporary. I stopped arguing. Instead, I listened. I noticed how confident he had become, how careless, how he underestimated me the way men often do when they think a woman's silence means surrender. He didn't see the way I watched him, how I memorized his routines, how my pain sharpened into clarity. I began to detach, not loudly, not cruelly, quietly. I focused on myself, my work, my independence. I rebuilt parts of me I had neglected while holding his life together. And with every day, the ache dulled, replaced by resolve. One evening, I asked him casually, "Do you love her?" He looked startled, then annoyed. This again, that was my answer. Betrayal has a long memory. It remembers every sacrifice made without gratitude, every truth twisted into a lie. And I remembered everything. I realized then that revenge didn't need anger. It needed patience, timing, dignity. I wasn't going to scream or beg or fight for someone who had already chosen to betray me. I would let him believe he was winning. I would let her believe she was special, and when the moment came, when the truth could no longer be denied, I would walk away on my terms, leaving behind nothing but the echo of his own choices. That night, I stood alone in the bathroom, staring at my reflection. I looked older, wiser, stronger. I smiled again, not out of pain this time, but understanding. Betrayal had taken something from me, but it had also given me something priceless. Control. There is a dangerous moment in every betrayal, the moment when the betrayer becomes comfortable. That was when my husband stopped hiding. He no longer flinched when his phone buzzed. He no longer bothered inventing detailed excuses. Confidence replaced caution, and arrogance followed close behind. He believed my calm was acceptance. He believed my silence was weakness. He had no idea it was strategy. I watched him from a distance that grew wider each day. I stopped asking where he was going, stopped waiting up, stopped filling the empty spaces he left behind. Instead, I invested in myself, my career, my finances, my sense of identity that had quietly been folded into his life for too long. Power, I learned, is quiet. I reconnected with colleagues I had neglected, took opportunities I once declined to keep our home balanced. I began to save money carefully, deliberately. Independence is built brick by brick, and I laid each one without him noticing. The older woman lingered in the background like a shadow I could finally name. I saw her at events now, standing beside him as if she belonged there. She never acknowledged me directly, only offered polite nods and thin smiles. She believed she had already won. That amused me because I knew things she didn't. I knew how quickly his loyalty shifted toward advantage. I knew how easily he borrowed admiration and called it love, and I knew the truth men like him forget power is attractive, but it is also temporary. He grew careless, documents left open, conversations overheard, promises made to two women who believed very different versions of him. I didn't interfere, I let the pieces arrange themselves. Revenge, when done right, doesn't announce itself. One evening, as he adjusted his tie in the mirror, he said casually, "You've been quiet lately." I met his gaze in the reflection. "I've been busy," he smiled, relieved. Good. That word good was his mistake, because while he believed he was finally untethered, I was preparing my release. I consulted lawyers, reviewed finances, gathered evidence not out of bitterness but protection. I made sure that when I left, I would leave whole. And I waited. The day came sooner than expected. We attended a formal gathering, one of those nights where appearances mattered more than truth. The older woman was there, radiant and assured, her hand resting lightly on his arm, as if it belonged there. He didn't stop her. I did nothing. I simply watched as people noticed, as whispers bloomed, as assumptions formed. I watched the discomfort creep across her face when she realized she wasn't invisible, and he wasn't as discreet as she believed. Later that night, she confronted him. I didn't hear the words, but I saw the tension, the fracture beginning to show. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in her eyes. That was when I knew. The woman he underestimated wasn't me at the cafe. It wasn't me crying silently in the dark. It was the version of me standing quietly now, fully aware of her worth. When we returned home, he reached for me, confusion etched into his face. "You're being distant." I smiled. "I'm just giving you space." He nodded, satisfied. Men like him never notice the door closing until it's locked. That night, as I packed a small bag, not to leave, but to be ready, I felt no anger, only clarity. The power he thought he had over me was gone. And soon he would realize it too. Chapter 3. The woman he underestimated. There is a dangerous moment in every betrayal. The moment when the betrayer grows comfortable. That was when my husband stopped pretending. He no longer flinched when his phone lit up in the middle of the night. He stopped inventing detailed lies and began offering lazy half-truths instead. Confidence replaced caution, and arrogance followed close behind. He believed my calm was surrender. He believed my silence meant I had accepted my place. He never considered it might be strategy. I observed him the way one studies patterns without emotion, without attachment. I stopped asking where he was going. I stopped waiting awake for him to return. I stopped filling the emptiness he created. Instead, I turned inward, reclaiming the parts of myself I had slowly folded into his life. Power, I learned, is built quietly. I poured my energy into my career, reaching out to contacts I had once pushed aside to support his ambitions. I began saving money carefully, deliberately building a foundation he knew nothing about. Independence doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives through decisions made consistently, silently. The older woman became impossible to ignore. She appeared beside him at events now, her presence casual, almost official. Her silver hair and composed smile gave her an air of certainty, as if she had already rewritten the narrative. When our eyes met, she offered polite acknowledgement, nothing more. She believed I was irrelevant. That almost made me laugh. Because I knew him in ways she never could. I knew how ambition softened his loyalty. I knew how admiration fed his ego. And I knew the truth men like him often forget. Power attracts, but it doesn't anchor. As weeks passed, he grew careless. Papers left open on his desk. Conversations held too close to open doors. Promises overlapping. Timelines colliding. I didn't intervene, I didn't warn him, I let inevitability do the work for me. Revenge doesn't require chaos. It requires patience. One evening, as he adjusted his tie in the mirror, he glanced at me and said, "You've been unusually quiet lately." "I've been busy," I replied calmly. He smiled, relieved. Good. That single word confirmed everything. He thought my world still revolved around his movements. He had no idea mine had already expanded beyond him. Behind the scenes, I prepared not with rage, but precision. I consulted legal advice, reviewed financial documents, collected proof where necessary, not to punish, but to protect myself. I planned an exit that would leave me whole, untouched by his recklessness. Then came the night everything shifted. We attended a formal gathering, one of those polished evenings where secrets hide behind champagne glasses. The older woman stood beside him openly now, her hand resting lightly on his arm. He didn't stop her. He didn't look at me. I didn't react. I simply watched as glances lingered, as whispers traveled. I saw the subtle change in her expression when she realized she was being seen, not as a mystery, but as a complication. For the first time, uncertainty flickered behind her confidence. Later, I saw them arguing in hushed tones. I didn't need to hear the words to understand the fracture forming. He had promised too much to too many people. That was when I knew the woman he underestimated wasn't the one who smiled politely at betrayal. It wasn't the one who stayed quiet out of fear. It was the woman standing calmly now, fully aware of her worth and her timing. That night, when we returned home, he reached for me, confusion tightening his voice. "You seem distant." I met his eyes. "I'm just giving you the space you seem to need." He nodded, satisfied. Men like him never notice the door closing, only when it locks. The end did not arrive with shouting. It arrived with silence, the kind that feels intentional. By the time my husband sensed something was wrong, it was already too late. His confidence had thinned, his movements less sure. The older woman no longer answered his calls the way she once did. Power, I had learned, is loyal only to itself, and she had begun to see him for what he truly was, a risk. He came home earlier now, asked questions, tried to touch me like familiarity could stitch back what betrayal had torn apart. One evening, as he spoke nervously about work, I set an envelope on the table between us. "What's this?" he asked. "My truth," I replied calmly. Inside were copies, not threats, not drama, just facts, financial records, timelines, proof, enough to strip away his confidence without a single raised voice. I watched his face change as realization dawned. "You planned this," he whispered. I smiled. I protected myself. That was the moment he understood. Not that I was angry, but that I was done. The older woman disappeared from his life shortly after. She valued her reputation too much to stay entangled with a man whose mask had slipped. I heard through quiet channels that she had moved on quickly, effortlessly. He had never been special, only convenient. That knowledge crushed him more than losing me ever could. The divorce was civil, clean, exactly as I intended. No public spectacle, no humiliation, just consequences. On the final day, as we signed the papers, he looked at me with something close to desperation. "Did you ever love me?" I paused, then answered honestly, "I did. That's why I stayed longer than I should have." He nodded slowly, understanding settling in like regret. I walked out of that office lighter than I had felt in years. Freedom doesn't arrive loudly, it settles into your bones. It shows up in quiet mornings, in choices made without fear, in the absence of anxiety you once mistook for love. I changed my routine, my hair, my future. I traveled, took risks, laughed without checking my phone. I rediscovered myself, not the version shaped by sacrifice, but the woman I had always been before I made myself smaller for someone else's comfort. Sometimes I thought of that cafe, of the woman I was when I smiled at betrayal instead of collapsing beneath it. That smile hadn't been weakness, it had been awareness. Sweet revenge isn't about destruction, it's about survival. About walking away intact while the one who underestimated you is left standing in the ruins of their own choices. The last time I saw him, months later, he looked older, smaller, the confidence gone. He watched me from across the room, recognition flickering in his eyes. I smiled again, not for him, but for me, because I didn't lose my husband that day in the cafe. I found myself.